The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Happy Friday, everybody. It's Fantasy NBA Today. And that's all I got. That's the end of the show. No, I'm kidding. I'm Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today, at Dan Besbris on Twitter if you want to give me a follow. Very excited to announce that the offseason is officially over. We had our one-day offseason here on Fantasy NBA Today, and we kick it back into high gear. But before we do that, because we got the great Aaron Bruski on today's show for the bulk of it, I did want to take a moment at the beginning to once again thank everyone for tuning in, for rating and reviewing, all the good stuff, for all the Twitter activity, the follows, the retweets, the mentions, the whatevers. It's all good stuff. Exciting times are these because the playoffs begin tomorrow, and so we will obviously be addressing that shortly here on the podcast. Coming up on today's show, Aaron Bruski will be on with us here in just a matter of moments. We actually recorded this segment, and I'll mention this again mid-show. Aaron and I recorded this segment late yesterday, and our brains are a little bit mushy from a season gone by, so you're going to get a little bit lost in the timeline of things we talk about. We say things like yesterday and tomorrow. Just assume that during the interview, if one of us says yesterday, we're actually referring to Wednesday, which I know is kind of stupid, and we probably could have gone back and just replaced those couple of words because this is the magic of the recorded podcast. But you know what? We're tired, and we're firing up the offseason here, and so you guys you get to just deal with us today. So Brewski's coming up. We are talking a season in review. We're talking hoop ball. We're talking what's to come. We're talking playoff betting. And then next week, we embark across our new schedule of events here at Fantasy NBA Today. So very exciting. And that's it for the opener. Nice short one today, which is exceptional because usually when I talk to Brew, we yammer for a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff. I mean, that's the offseason, though, right? Like, when there's a 7-minute opener during the season, you guys are just lusting for fantasy stuff. I get it. But the opener is most of the show now. With the offseason, we're just going to talk about whatever we want. So hopefully we can entertain you here over the next couple of months. And just as I promised, there's no offseason here on Fantasy NBA Today. After a brief introduction, we dive right back into the nonsense. Nonsense? I don't know. I guess it's sense. Depends on what angle you're coming at it from. With El Arquitecto. The architect doesn't stop building just because the regular season is over. Brew, what's happening?
We are building, that's for sure. How you doing, man? I'm trying to give you my best energy right now because I'm on like 2 hours sleep. So what can I say?
Yeah, you want to tell everybody why?
Well, so much happens here that has nothing to do with me, and that's truly the case with what we did over the last 2-3 days, which is at the end of the year, we just kind of do like an instant post-mortem on every player in the league, which is kind of a funny thing to do. You're at the end of your rope, kind of the gas tank is empty, everybody's sort of done with their fantasy leagues, and then you just go and just like the equivalent of a draft guide almost, and right there for free in the blurbs. And so we blurbed the entire league, and most of the guys handled most of it. And so Panda, Mike Passador, content editor, Eric Ong in a, backup capacity is actually a little limited right now, but then 8 of our other blurbers also chipped in. But it's such a huge gargantuan effort that I was up until 4 a.m. And of course, when the Kings start doing Kings things, the bat signal goes into the air, the phone starts ringing, and this is it's a really big story. So I've been working on that, and there's no rest for the weary because we're getting right into the postseason here and trying to set up a postseason fantasy league here internally. It's actually my pet project for today as I get my brain back. And just there's really no off season anymore. We're moving into future development stuff, so I'm pretty excited. But yeah, a little bit burnt today.
Yeah, it's been a haul. I mean, I can't believe you guys went straight into that. Even I had a Thursday podcast that was just me thanking everybody for like 20 minutes. Even even Fantasy NBA Today basically took a 1-day hiatus. There was a show, but it wasn't like a real show.
And yesterday, I was so dialed into my own individual fantasy league.
By the way, I should mention to everybody, we are recording this on Thursday evening. So when Bruce says yesterday, he means Wednesday.
Yes. Thank you. Big Wednesday. I mean, I had like a 4-hour sweat. And, DFS guys do this all the time.
Oh, don't even get me started on the DFS. I got beef with the DFS universe right now. But I mentioned the fact on yesterday's show that some people are in NBA fantasy leagues where the payout is like $20,000, and one of those is yours. That's more than my stomach could handle.
There were 3-pointers and block shots last night that were worth like $500, $1,000, $2,000 a
Good
piece.
Lord.
And I had Zach Collins at one point, and actually I had him all week long, and he bounced a 3-pointer in, and like I haven't been vocal all year watching this stuff, and my wife was just like, what the hell is going on upstairs? Because I am screaming like I'm at a football game or in a football game every time a 3-pointer goes down. It was nuts. Yeah, it was good. And I don't know if it's because we don't do it every day. I think the guys that are in DFS, when they're doing the sweats, they actually just don't pay attention. That's the only way I could handle it if it was every day, that much money on the line. So yeah, no, it was okay. Looking back at it, I had a good sweat. We did okay.
So, from in terms of like being able to watch or not watch something, I get a lot out of watching the games for full season stuff, and I get it on the DFS side. Once your lineup is locked, you're done. Like it's rolling. Like you could go back in if you have someone playing late that's a late scratch. You might have to make a move that regard. So you have to be a little bit tuned in, but like you don't have to watch the individual guy in your game once the game starts. I do think there's something to be said for just sort of seeing how guys are playing, and certainly in a full season league, you kind of want to know when a guy's getting his minutes, what his touches are like. But on the last day of the regular season, none of that matters because there's no tomorrow, which is, I think, probably going to be the name of my high school coming of age story here. Fantasy NBA Today. No tomorrow. The Dan Besbris Fantasy NBA story. You really don't have to watch on the last day. Once those suckers are in, you can just close your eyes.
Here's my big problem in life. I'm like Billy Bean in Moneyball. Like, how he refuses to watch it.
Yeah.
Like I've been that way my whole life, and so brought up in baseball. So superstition and everything's just been a big part of everything. So I remember I've been in a lot of these situations. Thankfully, I should say, because we have a wing in our house that's the Larry Fitzgerald wing. When we were going through that one, where we beat 2,500 other people, or I should say I guess me and my wife, because she had to put up with me. But then we had to go to Vegas for the draft, which was held in the postseason, and we had to pick players from teams that we thought would advance, and that whole postseason format. And then you had to watch the games, and I remember Doc at RotoWorld would just be messaging me the results, and I'm like getting a little irate, like, don't tell me anything, like that you're messing with. And last night, there was things that were going wrong for me. Hello, Dennis Schroeder and his 8 3-pointers. And I'm like turning off the TV at that point. And it's hard though, because you kind of go all year long, and I guess you should enjoy at least a little bit of the sweat,
No.
So I'm sitting there thinking, it was tough because I was, and I have to cover the Kings as well. So I kind of just had that game on. And then when they benched all of my players, I had Healed, I had Bielitsa and Collins. Basically all 3 got effectively benched. I ended up watching the rest of the night hoping that Paul Millsap or Monty Morris wouldn't hit a 3. Paul Millsap hit the amount of threes needed to put my lead for second place in a half-point lead. And then I had to hope that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did not get a block for like the last fourth quarter. And so I watched this thing pretty intently last night, and then we got it. I got second place. So it was a big prize.
Hooray.
So,
well, it's a 20K league, so I'm assuming second place is
it's
some...
about it's 5K.
Oh, my God. That is beefy. Yeah, that would be enough to get me plenty of new laptops. You going to Disneyland?
I'm going to take a nap, and then, I mean, I'm not kidding, Dan. You know this as much as anybody. We're literally like, this is actually the time of the year we get excited about because we really have a lot of bandwidth to build into the website new stuff.
Yeah,
so
I'm excited.
We got that roadmap already teed up. We got developers already working on stuff, and we're just ready to fly. So, excited about all that, and then I wake up to the Dave Yeager stuff
let's talk about that actually, because that hasn't been discussed on this podcast yet. First thing I wanted to mention was, yes, once you get into the offseason, there is sort of an acclimation period too, where I continue to check Twitter only to see that there's nothing there. It's a weird sensation. You're just like, hey, I wonder what's nothing. But we'll talk about playoff basketball momentarily here. Thursday was NBA firing day, 2019 edition. Larry Drew and the Cavs both said it's been fun. Bye-bye. And they walked out the front door of the restaurant together, shook hands, and then walked in different directions. And so that was all right, I guess. Dave Yeager was fired. That's obviously what you're talking about out of Kingstown. In Grizzliesville, JB Bickerstaff was effectively told he'd be back next season earlier on the morning, and then by the afternoon he was fired. Chris Wallace was reassigned, and the Grizzlies have no one left in the front office anymore. And the party's just getting started. So you're piped in on the Kings side of things, Bruce. So what do you make of that whole situation?
Yeah, I'm still trying to pick up some of the pieces from it, but things pivoted hard about 24 hours ago. So we're in mid-Thursday here, and like I said, the bat signal usually goes up. Stuff goes down there, and there's a lot of complex stuff there. Dave Yeager, it's funny, when he got the job, us fantasy heads that also work in media were like, hey, he's not that great with rookies and he overplays his veterans, and nobody really listened to us. And that's pretty much the reason that things went south there. Not giving minutes, like the kind of minutes that the front office wanted out of Marvin Bagley. They kind of wanted him to play like 30 minutes right off the jump. And it didn't work out like that. And Marvin Bagley wasn't ready. This is the one time that Yeager got it right, unlike playing Zach Randolph in one of the worst on-court decisions I've ever seen. And the year before with Matt Barnes almost single-handedly, if you think about it, if those Kings had been a little bit more successful, they might not have traded DeMarcus Cousins. His bad play, and it was bad, because Dave Yeager wanted to keep that locker room, in a good place. And Barnes was a popular player, somebody that DeMarcus Cousins wanted to have on the floor. He sort of cedes the power to the veterans and then holds the young players to the fire. And but it's different with Bagley because he was such a big risk, where the Kings picked him. And so you've got ownership, you've got Vlade Divac, you got Brandon Williams, who is his own set of drama. He also got let go today. They were all in favor of Bagley to the point where you got that article in the beginning of the year in the middle of this amazing start that the Kings had. And, everybody's sort of flying high, and you get this ill-conceived leak from Brandon Williams to Chris Haynes that if Yeager didn't start playing the kids, that he was going to get let go. It was all downhill from there. And they had more skirmishes after that. And that set the stage for, I'm told about 2 to 3 weeks ago, the team started seriously considering making this move. And part of it is that Luke Walton appeared to be available, which is just now funny because of the whole Magic Johnson thing and all the chaos on the last couple of days in Los Angeles. But the Kings, and Yeager for that matter, essentially kind of had this sort of not mutual idea that there'd be a parting of ways, but Yeager's been, kind of telegraphing that he wanted out. And I think they had their eyes on Luke Walton. He seems to be the leading candidate so far. I'm guessing they'll probably settle into some sort of a coaching search, but that caused this Kings team to really fall apart at the seams. And what you saw was a Marvin Bagley that kind of looked like a player that felt like he already had the keys to the franchise, and a player that wanted to be the number one guy. And some of the stuff he was doing on the court, ill-conceived shots, not moving the ball, missing wide open 3-point shooters, I might add, and a guy named Buddy Hield, who's one of the best in the league. I think it's just all sort of kind of, I think that ends the stuff from in previous years. I mean, Buddy Hield had his minutes restricted. De'Aaron Fox had to play with Zach Randolph. It took a lot of the heat for not playing well because Zach Randolph was out there screwing everything up. And Zach's a great guy, and he's a great player. He's probably a Hall of Fame player. But he was pretty much washed, last year. So this all came to a slow, rolling burn in about 24 hours ago. He started getting the smoke signals that he was going to be out. And then that's what happened this morning. He's gone. And the Kings were followed up by the Grizzlies, who basically told everybody that JB Bickerstaff was going to be sticking around, from what I can gather.
Yeah,
and got
bye-bye.
rid of it. Yeah, then got rid of him later on in the day. And, I mean, just a total mess out of there.
Yeah,
And,
the only good news out of all this is that as a Laker fan, my team has been completely overshadowed by the lunacy of Thursday's stuff. It was almost like Magic was like, I'm going to do my nonsense on Wednesday, and then someone else is going to do something stupid tomorrow, and people are going to kind of forget about me. Now the Lakers just have to not screw up the next step, which I don't think we can expect that to be a thing, because they've basically screwed up every small step they could, aside from signing LeBron. And I liked JaVale McGee. But, yeah, I mean, is there anyone else to go? Is this it? Are we done with the firings now?
Ooh, Friday's always a good day to let people go. I think that was, I think we learned that in the great movie Office Space.
Yeah, I was about to say, what is it that you would say you do here? So which
who knows?
Anybody else that jumps out at you off the list of?
Off the top of my head,
do you think Alvin Gentry wants to be back? What, does he even want to be back?
No. I think he's gone. I would put a lot of money on the fact that he's gone.
I think he wants
really
to be
gone. He's struggled, and they're going to have a new front office there, so he's going to be gone. I would be shocked if he stayed.
I'm looking up and down the list, and obviously things have yet to shake out in the playoffs, but I'd be pretty surprised if any of the Western Conference playoff teams changed head coaches after this year. Most of them, by all accounts, did a really good job, either sort of doing what they needed to do. If you look at teams like the Warriors.
Didn't Boylan get an extension?
It sounds like his is, at the time of our recording this podcast, it sounds like it is very close to a 3-year extension in Chicago.
Yeah, so that's seeing there. I think maybe Fizdale could interestingly be on the ropes.
I guess it depends a little bit on who shows up in town, right?
Yeah, that decision-making complex is just a mess. I think Brooks sounds like he's safe, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do an about face there.
That's crazy. That's the one that I was going to bring up. He feels like he's got to be the unsafe coach in the NBA right now. That was a team that ended the year I got my math wrong. 22 games under 500. I mean, it was 18. I got it right the first time. That's a massive disappointment.
I haven't double checked to see if Billy Donovan has got an extension. I highly doubt it. He would be somebody that if the Thunder don't do well in the playoffs, I think he could be gone. I could actually see Terry Stotts being gone.
Oh man, that would
and I would want to. I would want to do some research on that before.
I would want to hire him immediately if I'm another organization, because he's taking a team. I thought Portland was going to be in total stagnation mode this year, and they ended up having a really nice season.
I never understand this with any NBA team. Like what they did in the playoffs against the Warriors 2 years ago was so bad from an X's and O's standpoint. And this happens all over the league. And you just think sometimes even the best coach might not be able to get through to his players. And what they were doing against the Warriors were blitzing every pick and roll with Lillard and McCollum and saying, okay, hey, Mason Plumlee, we want you to beat us. But the Blazers never, ever optimized to do anything about that with any sort of guard-to-guard passing scheme to just sort of get out of these traps, which are, they're tough, but they're not that tough. And they just ran into a brick wall every single time. So that was a tough one for me with Stotts because I had a lot of respect for him, but it was just such an easy X's and O's situation that he sort of just missed. Sorry for all the background noise here.
No, it's actually not. It's not coming through all that much. It was not great before we went on air, but it's been pretty good now. So you need not apologize. This feels like a pretty good segue, Brew, into our next segment on today's podcast, and that's playoff series wagering. We got the lines out now.
Oh, yeah.
They came out
fired up for this. I haven't even looked, really.
Well, get ready, my good friend, because I'm
going to calculate odds on the spot in my head. Let's do it.
All right. I'll tell you the series. You tell me what you think it might be, and then I'll give you the real one.
See which way I'm betting.
Yeah, that's right. So these odds came out Thursday, middle of the day. So they've been out for about 24 hours now. They may have adjusted slightly based on early wagering, but we're going to go on opening lines. Starting in the Eastern Conference, because there's really only one truly competitive series out east. We'll start at the top. Milwaukee, Detroit. I'm not sure we actually need to do our little exercise on this one, but we can if you want to. I will tell you, Milwaukee is a prohibitive favorite.
They're probably checking in at what, like minus 500?
Minus 10,000.
What?
Yeah.
10,000?
10,000. There is zero hope. People have zero hope the Pistons can off the Milwaukee Bucks.
10,000? So what is it?
Plus 1,600. So there's a big gap in between there.
So, wow.
Yeah, that's a no bet.
I honestly, okay, look, Blake Griffin's knee looks terrible right now, but the Bucks have to they got to do something in the playoffs for me to just give them this respect that they're this juggernaut.
I've been so impressed with their defense that I'm not going to doubt them until they run into somebody good, and Detroit's not good.
No, they're not. They're not good, but it's a lot of weight up front. I mean, Brook Lopez will be busy. Giannis will just have a field day.
Yeah, he's just gonna torch whoever they put on him. And yeah, I got no. I mean, and honestly, in terms of who you could stick on Andre Drummond, Brook Lopez is one of the better options out there. It's just a giant dude who can box out.
Yeah. I mean, what
They're
Blake
cooked.
Griffin would have to do is put his shoulder in the chest of Giannis and really just sort of leave a dent there.
Yeah, and if he's not healthy,
and take it out of him on the offensive side.
And if he's not healthy, that's that.
Yeah, so I'll no bet it, but
yeah.
I'm still giving the side eye to the Bucks at least a little bit.
Toronto, Orlando. This one is less prohibitive of a favorite, but still quite large. What do you think your wager might be if you had to guess on Toronto? It's a pretty big one still.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would have those odds way better than the other one, or more prohibitive, I should say. But it probably isn't.
No.
And so I'm going to say they're minus 1,000.
Yeah, pretty close. Toronto minus 1,200, Orlando plus 700 in this series.
Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing, the idea of Jonathan Isaac in this series just doing some things to cover up some of the stuff that the Raptors do well, but the Magic aren't good.
No, they're gonna get smoked.
And the Raptors are very good.
Yeah, this to me is a no bet. It's too much to lay on Toronto. They're going to eventually win this series. Orlando played well down the stretch, and I think that's why they're getting a little bit more attention here. Third one in the Eastern Conference. This I'll tell you now, it's going down the list the way you'd expect, basically. Eastern Conference, they get slightly less favorite-y, less chalky as we work our way towards the middle of the pack. Philadelphia, Brooklyn. 76ers are the favorite. What would you think you might see as a Philly favorite in this 3-6 matchup?
They're kind of a public team, though. I mean, the love that D'Angelo Russell gets is so bad. So I think maybe Brooklyn's getting way more credit than they deserve here. I'll go minus 800.
Minus 500 Philadelphia in this one. So oddly low. I know. I thought it'd be in the 600s range. Oddly, a lot of love on Brooklyn. I'm wondering, Brew, if any of this has to do with the fact that Philly played poorly down the stretch as they rested half of their team the last 3 weeks. They were so far behind the 2 seed and so far ahead of the 4 that they just rested everybody. And we haven't actually seen them play at full strength since like mid-March.
In another example of NBA players doing what they want and then the organization and the teams not having any control, like letting Joel Embiid play in the All-Star game and just play in general when he wasn't healthy, it just reeks of the player just saying, I'm going to play and you could go screw yourself. And, you've got Elton Brand's not a very experienced general manager. His knee could be the reason that number is so low, but I would be pretty comfortable taking them minus 500.
Yeah, that's a favorite that's decent size in chalk, but also to me one of the better favorite values on the board. Oddly enough, Brooklyn to me can't get over that hump. There's too much firepower in Philly, and they're too strong.
They can't defend Joel Embiid.
No, centers have just destroyed Brooklyn this
year.
Killed
them all year long.
And then you could stick Jimmy Butler or Ben Simmons on D'Angelo Russell, and that's a very different beast to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And in playoff basketball, he's going to really, he's going to see a lot he ain't seen before.
Yeah, I would lean to the favorite in that one as well. Boston, Indiana. This one actually surprised me a little bit. I won't tell you how. I will tell you Boston is the favorite. Celtics, Pacers, the 4-5. What do you think, especially now with the Marcus Smart injury?
Well, you tipped me off when you said that these things are all going to line up a certain way.
Yeah. The West is not so predictable.
So I'll go with Boston minus 320.
Very close. Boston minus 350. I like the Pacers on this one.
So, we talked about the Cause and Bruce show a couple weeks back. Those Pacers they're set up for, to be a decent bet at some point in time, just because nobody knows even half the players on their team from a public standpoint. And, a lot of continuity there. Good veteran players up and down the rotation, coach that's been there, done that. I get it. And, you take Marcus Smart out of the equation. That's just sort of one big time playoff player that you can cross off the list. Gordon Hayward might get forced into more minutes than he would be accustomed to. He kind of matches up well with Thad Young. So maybe he can survive, and he might, Boyan probably takes him to the shed, but he's a guy that has kind of played a little bit better lately, but he's the one that will get exploited by teams. I really do think that Boston figures it out and wins that series, but I get it if somebody wants to throw some money down on the Pacers.
Yeah, it just felt like slightly too big of a line to me. It's not one of those ones where I think the Pacers are going to run away with this series. It would probably take 7 games if they were going to do it. But if you think it goes that far, getting plus 300 roughly, Indiana at plus 290 is not the worst thing in the world. Yes, Boston, if they have something click here, and obviously Al Horford being in the lineup every night is a big deal for that team. But we'll see. We'll see if Marcus Smart's absence makes any difference. Western Conference now. Let's shift over to the other side. Golden State Clippers. I don't even know if we should really discuss this one. Same odds, by the way, as Bucks Pistons. It's minus 10,000 and plus 1,600. The Warriors have been driving angry here the last couple of weeks. They look pissed about something. Now, maybe it was doubters. I don't know, but they've looked pretty angry the last couple of weeks.
They got guys like Stan Van Gundy out on SportsCenter saying that he doesn't think they're going to win. It's that kind of stuff that gets play in the locker room. I think that they are going to be a little bit angry. We're just going to have to see when they play the Rockets or a good team, if those fissures in the locker room start to bubble up.
Yeah, the Warriors, after losing in overtime to the Timberwolves on March 29th, rattled off 6 straight wins, including a 47-point win over the Hornets. They beat the Nuggets by 14, the Lakers by 18. Who cares? The Cavs, they beat the Clippers by 27, and then on the last day of the regular season, they rested some dudes. Not a ton of right home to your parents kind of wins in that mix, but they have looked a little more directed. Still, you can't This is a no bet. I don't think there's any argument with that one. The other three in the Western Conference are fairly interesting, though, and I'm not going to give you any hints. Nuggets Spurs is the 2-7. What do you think the line is on this one? Yeah, it's weird. Things get weird.
I think the Spurs are a public team here, and
you're right about that. The question is how much.
Yeah, right. So I think it's going to go Denver minus 260.
You are very close. Good guess, sir. Denver minus 215. Spurs are actually a tiny bit more public than that. Spurs at plus 171. I happen to think there's a bunch of value on Denver with this one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because and there's a couple things that I noticed here is that Gary Harris is getting his sea legs back, and same with Will Barton. Those two guys have been terrible all year. Fantasy owners know this. This is why you got to listen to fantasy owners. But they're getting their legs back, and the way that it all panned out in last night's game, they're a good team, and you go across to the Spurs side, and yeah, sure, DeMar DeRozan probably has a bounce back playoff performance in him. He can't be bad for his whole career. He's a good player. He's got to have a good series at some point in time. LaMarcus Aldridge is probably beating the odds on the physicality side. They got quality players up and down the rotation, but they're still not deep. Denver is the opposite. They've got depth, though that doesn't play as well in the playoffs. I think I would probably lay some pretty good money on Denver in that one.
Yeah, that does seem like a pretty low number on that side. It worries me a tiny bit, I guess. But, yeah, it's just, it seems to tell you the money's coming in on San Antonio and probably has been earlier, and Denver didn't play all that well down the stretch and so on and so forth. 3-6, this is a very interesting one. Portland, Oklahoma City. Blazers Brew, as you obviously already know, attempted to dodge the Thunder by resting their starters in the last game of the regular season, but gasp, the other guys won it anyway and played their way into a series against a team that beat them all 4 times this year. Blazers are the 3 seed. They are the home court in this series. Oklahoma City, however, again, swept the season set. What do you think the line is on this one?
I'll say that the line on this one is OKC minus 180.
You are correct on the favorite, but shorter. This is much closer to Pick'em. Oklahoma City is minus 130 as the road team in a 3-6 matchup. Should we argue with the Blazers, who basically told us they don't want to play this team? I feel like a lack of confidence is a pretty big deal.
It's hard to read for me. I gotta kind of really know that team is doing what you're saying they're doing. There's been a lot of mileage on Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. They wanted to get him back on the floor, but probably appreciated the rest. I'm still, though, when I look at the Thunder, the only thing I think that can screw them up here is if internally there are issues. Russ has been a mess all year. For all the big numbers, he's been a mess. And, Paul George has been great, and that core is pretty much set. But, what if Billy Donovan isn't the guy for the job? They do have some depth issues, same as Portland. So I don't know that there's any real advantage or disadvantage here. But here's where I look at the Thunder and go, okay, they're going to do this. You got Russ, been there, done that, ton of experience there. Paul George, same thing. Steven Adams, pretty rock solid right there. I think those 3 guys alone sort of guarantee this series. When you go over the Portland side, you're looking at Lillard. I don't think McCollum's the same guy that he was 2 years ago before this injury popped up. And then really, where do you go to after that? And as Cantor, is going to be ineffective in a series against Steven Adams. They're just going to run out of firepower there. So if it's minus, you said 130?
Correct.
Yeah, minus 130. Yeah, I would load up on that one for the Thunder.
And finally, the 4-5, Houston Rockets, Utah Jazz. This one, not as crazy. What do you think we're seeing here? Houston, the 4 seed.
A lot of respect for both teams out there in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go.
It balances out a little bit. You're correct.
Houston, like minus maybe like 150.
A little more respect for Houston, minus 270. The opening
Whoa.
line, Rockets. Yeah, Rockets are the favorite in this one. Jazz played them well, but they didn't play many games late in the year when Houston was playing their best basketball. I know this is a tough one. I mean, this is going to be a really good series. I would lean to the Houston side. I don't know if the Jazz can get quite up over that Harden hump.
That's obviously the game right there. I mean, it was really great watching Patrick Beverley teach Jay Crowder how to cover him. They in Utah, they need those secondary scorers to really be good. And Kyle Korver's a guy that probably helps them in that regard. Jay Crowder's not afraid to shoot. Donovan Mitchell, at least he got most of his early season stuff out of the way. Ricky Rubio, probably prerequisite that he's pretty good in this series, but we've already seen this play. I'm gonna go with Houston, but
270.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go 270.
I was actually surprised. That was around what I thought it would be. I figured they would get it's because of the Harden thing. Because I think Harden's about to take home an MVP trophy. Even if the advanced stats point to Giannis, Harden, I think, is bringing that thing home. And
every player has to lose it in some regard one year when they deserved it. I would give it to Giannis this year based on play.
He probably should, but I don't think he will.
Yeah, you're right. I'm with you. I think it's going to be Harden.
Yeah, it's story. The MVP is about story, and
these guys are watching games. These MVP voters, like half of them are watching a decent amount of games. Come on.
Yeah, and then the thing is, when you put up all those 40s and you do something that folks haven't done before, that usually gets you the leg up, even if one guy has the better actual overall contribution to his team for a team that has more victories. But you know what? Giannis is probably going to win 2 or 3 of them over the next 5 years. So, like you said, sometimes you have to lose one before you win one, and I'm sure they feel that way too. Last thing, Brew, on today's docket, we'll get into some more futures on our next recorded show together. Lesson learned. We're going to start getting into that a little bit on the podcast. So what's one lesson you took away from this season as you reflect here just shortly after the conclusion of the 2018-19 campaign?
One lesson.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the one. It can just be kind of any one that jumps out at you.
I think it's gonna come down to risk. I do this every year. Risk management. Like you really got to just dive in and sort of understand the details. But guys taking steps forward are going to be met with more scrutiny, I think, this year. And it's tough because if you don't give them a credit for the ability to take a step forward, and then they do that, and you get burnt. I kind of think that's where I would go with a lesson learned, but
yeah, you're digging deep over there.
I am digging deep because, there's a couple guys that, I thought that this was a very public season, coming into the year. And, I was very worried that a lot of our positions were similar to other sites and that there wasn't as much shakeup of the puzzle board as we get in other years. And I like the shakeup. The more shakeup, the better for us. But there was some guys that were probably, even if we look back at it, pretty good draft picks that just totally bombed out. And the idea there was that they were going to take a step forward, and then they ended up not doing it. The Gary Harrises, the Jamal Murrays, the Victor Oladipos, the Chris Dunns, even a guy like Chris Middleton, who was completely safe, for 3 straight years. the intel, the gathering side is something that I'll probably look at a lot more, like learning about Middleton, having a conversation with Budenholzer. We found out about this like 4 months into the season, where Budenholzer asked him at the beginning of the year, told him that you're going to get less shots, and that you're going to stand in the corner a lot more in this offense. I'm sure that was a great conversation.
Yeah. Hey, do you think he's coming back to Milwaukee? He hasn't signed his extension yet, right?
Well, he didn't. This is the other thing, is like, did he experience an injury we don't know about? Did he lay off the conditioning because he was upset? He didn't look like the same guy this year. So there could be a chicken and egg component to that. Just a little bit slow, and his steals rate went way down. So that, for a guy who's, you could take his numbers for 3 straight seasons were a facsimile of each other. One of the most consistent players I've seen in the league. Very easy to profit off of as well.
That's a tough thing to account for in terms of a lesson learned, right? Because usually, me, I love to draft guys that have been consistent year over year. How can you change your strategy in that regard?
There are a lot of like safe plays this year that were good plays that didn't work out. And that's why I kind of think it was a public season. And when I say safe plays, I mean, I'm talking like fantasy experts get in there and, they kind of know what they're doing. It's public plays like Carmelo Anthony 2 years ago, that kind of a thing. And then let's say he hits, right? It wasn't a good pick at the time, but he had a great year. And so therefore, he was a great pick. Not that kind of a situation. We had hand injuries at the wazoo this year, which are just simple. Either they hit the rim on a dunk or somebody slammed down on their hand hard on a swipe, that kind of thing. Jonas Valanciunas, Clint Capella, that kind of thing, where they're having great seasons or are positioned to do good things. And you can't really do much to prepare yourself for that. It's not like you could not draft a guy who had a hand injury. No. And so, when I was just trying to think of like lessons learned, I think there, like a guy like Chris Dunn, actually, I think I want more intel is what it boils down to, is like Chris Dunn was pretty sure that Zach LaVine wasn't coming back based on his comments to the Chicago Tribune. He said, like, if I had known I was going to play off the ball, I would have prepared over the summer a totally different way.
Right.
So it's kind of weird. Like, did Zach LaVine, when he got the offer sheet signed by the Kings, hilariously, did somebody in the Bulls front office change their mind? Very likely, I would imagine. And then say, okay, yeah, we're going to keep this guy at this rate. And then Chris Dunn's like, what are we doing here? You just told me all this stuff. And now and that might explain, some of the stuff that happened with Dunn, which, by the way, his entire season gets pretty much killed by an early knee injury and, never ever gets his place in line back. So how do you account for that stuff? I don't know. I think greater intel might help, but I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to build here. But the lessons learned, I'm actually really excited to sit down and do the postmortem work that I always do, because there are a lot of sort of public situations that happened this year, as well as I just kind of want to see where it all shook out. We had a lot of good picks, and somebody like Chris Dunn really hurt me this year, and it wasn't even like I had him that much higher than other sites. It was just that, like, he kept falling to me in drafts. And it was like, okay, of course I'm going to take this guy that we got, highly ranked. And, it didn't pan out for me there. So that was a little bit of frustrating, a little point of frustration. But yeah, no lessons learned. I don't know. What are yours?
Oh, don't worry. I'll go through them one by one on this podcast. And the first one I'm going to hit on the next show, see how I teased that there, is free throw shooting. I have some thoughts on free throw shooting and how I'm going to reassess my my targets with that going into next year. I'll do that a bunch on next week's shows. I'll mention, by the way,
but are you gonna? Did you take Whiteside a bunch?
Just one, but that's all it needed. That's all it needed to happen. All it takes is one. Excited to announce that starting on Monday, we'll be moving to our off-season host calendar. So you'll be having me, and I believe on Monday we'll start it. The great Ethan Noroff will be getting things going on Monday. Oh, yes.
Hey,
Tuesdays.
That's some good people right there. Congrats to getting married.
That's right.
For getting married.
His nuptials.
Mr. Noroff.
Old Ethan coming in hot. So we got, it's going to be either myself and Neil or myself and Adrian on Tuesday. We got myself and Brandon Marcus. We got Brandon, Ethan, Neil, Adrian rotating through Thursdays and Fridays. It's going to be a wingding, and Brew will get you back in there for some more post-mortem stuff.
I'm telling you, one of these days, you guys are going to get rid of me, and I was never here.
Well,
just scrape me off the masthead and everything.
All I'm saying is don't look outside your window when you hear little bird calls, because that's definitely not us communicating with one another.
Don't worry. I know you're hanging outside Nico's.
Yeah, it's not me
right now.
It's not me.
Intel for next year.
We have really good high-range
See, this is what I'm talking about with
walkie-talkies.
getting Intel, Dan.
I got the Nico Intel. By the way,
we need
is
more stalkers.
Hey, if you want to stock for Hoopball, hit me up at Dan Besbris. No, I'm kidding. Please don't.
No, actually, developers though.
That's true. That's true.
That project is getting extremely exciting. So if you like web development and you like fantasy basketball, hit us up.
There you go. He's the big dog. We'll get you back on here in the next couple of weeks, do some post-mortem stuff. At Aaron Bruski on Twitter, I am Dan Besbris. Thanks so much again for a magical season. We'll pick things up again on Monday with the official off-season.
Thank you, listeners. Can I interrupt and step on
you? May.
Just thank you. We're not anything without you guys. And all of your well wishes and everything you say to us, it absolutely powers us. And if you have complaints, that powers us as well.
Just in a rage-filled way.
The community here is second to none, and it's just an honor to be able to serve you guys on a daily basis.
Yep. He said it best. I'm not adding anything else. Have a great weekend, everybody. Off-season mode begins Monday. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.